Great. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Grace, and I am describing my project done within Resilient NU, which is led by Sam, who is the audience today. So it's a bit unconventional of a, get this out of the way. It's a bit unconventional of a teaching context, but I used Resilient NU, which is housed within Health Promotion and Wellness here at Northwestern. It's an opt-in 5-week program. It's about increasing wellness, managing stress, and finding balance. So you can imagine why all of those things are very important for graduate students or students at any level. This initiative came out of student demand. So it was actually the undergraduate student government that really advocated for a program of this sort, and it's won some awards recently, so really well received in the Northwestern community, and I feel that it should be expanded to graduate students and other professional students. Last summer, during the pandemic, the program went virtual and has been entirely virtual since then. Summer 2020 was also the first quarter that the program was open and advertised to graduate students. So some of the data that I'll be presenting today has been collected in all the quarters since summer 2020. So they've all been collected in the virtual format, and grad students have been included since then. So I participated in the program in fall 2020, shortly thereafter joined the board, and then was really interested in using this STAR opportunity to create a grad student only cohort and see how students responded to that setting. So my all grad student cohort just ran over the last several weeks this quarter. The questions I was interested in are, is the program equally effective for undergraduates and grad students? Again, it was originally designed for undergraduates, but resilience is important for students of all levels, so I can certainly see why it would be applicable to graduate students. I was also interested in if grad students demonstrate more effective learning when completing this program within a cohort of their peers and with grad student facilitators, as opposed to in mixed cohorts, such as the one I experienced. And I was also interested just qualitatively in how grad students responded to the program. So hopefully you all are familiar with the term resilience. It just means the ability to bounce back, overcome adversity, and hopefully you can also imagine why it's important for graduate students. I love this word cloud. I did not generate it myself. The grad school made it during Graduate Student Appreciation Week. So they had a raffle for prizes that you could opt into. And when you went to enter your contact information, they just had a fun question that you could choose to submit 3 positive character traits you think are beneficial for grad school. And they shared this, and you can see that resilience is front and center. I asked TGS for the data, and they said 78 respondents said resilience. So it was the second most commonly submitted term, acknowledging that grad students realize the value of resilience and its importance in graduate school. So a bit about the methods. A lot of this data collection has been set since the inception of Resilient NU. So before the program, demographic information is collected from respondents. I won't be talking about that today. And then the only true pre-test or survey they fill out before the 5-week program is the coping self-efficacy scale. So this is a standardized scale asking when things aren't going well for you, how confident are you that you can do a number of things that are highly relevant to the curriculum of Resilient NU. So asking how confident are you that you can talk positively to yourself, keep from getting down in dumps, questions like that. And the responses range from 0 to 10 for a full scale of 0 to 260. So they felt that prior to the 5-week program. Following the 5-week program, they do the self-efficacy scale again. So same questions are asked again. There's also an additional standardized scale called the Freiburg Mindfulness Inventory used in the post-program survey. So this is quasi pre-post, meaning they're only asked to fill out these questions after the program, but as you can see in the header here, they're asked to consider how they felt about these experiences before participating in Resilient NU go to a second page, and then it's the same questions in the context of after Resilient NU. And it's just framed this way because of the Dunning-Kruger effect and the fact that participants will actually like regress if they first are confident in their ability, and then the more they learn, the more they realize that they aren't as confident as they thought. So it is a quasi pre-post test, but they're both filled out after the program. There's also an optional recorded interview about the program objectives, which I won't talk about, and then the new assessment, which I put together as part of my participation in this program. So the assessment that I put together, I really wanted to get a sense of how students were responding to the grad student only cohort and how they valued their peers. So it started with 2 Likert scale questions, asking if they could relate to the lived experiences shared by the members of their cohort, and if they felt understood by the core members when sharing their own lived experiences. So trying to get a sense of their sense of belonging, and if they felt that their peers could relate. One of the open-ended questions I was especially interested in is how, if at all, did the members of your cohort affect your experience in the program? So hoping to get a sense of how they're responding to the all grad student cohort. I also have a question asking how likely they are to recommend the program to a peer, and then with an open response question to explain their response to that Likert scale. And lastly, what aspects of the program could be improved, which I won't be talking about today. But this is the assessment that I put together as part of STAR. So thank you all for your feedback throughout this process. It's been great. So all this data shown here, again, is not just the spring cohorts, but all the virtual cohorts. My cohort had 7 participants, and 6 of them filled out all the surveys. So there are 6 data points for the grad student only cohort, and then 21 grad students that have previously been in mixed cohorts, so myself included, and then 42 undergraduates in these data. So for the Freiburg mindfulness inventory, the full scale goes up to 56. So in purple are the grad students that have been in mixed cohorts. So again, there's 21 of those. And the green is my most recent cohort. And you can see here that at baseline, grad students in both types of cohorts had slightly lower medians than the undergraduate students. So these horizontal lines here are the median, the X is the mean, just indicating when they're skew. So you can see that there are some baseline differences in the full scale. However, all groups improve for the Freiburg mindfulness inventory. You can see in the post program, all the medians are almost identical. So there is a very small sample size in my cohort, so there's a bit of skew there, but I think it's pretty striking how similar the medians are. And since the grad students actually began with lower medians, again, smaller sample sizes, but it could be argued that they may have demonstrated even more learning on this scale since they achieve similar levels to the undergraduates, which again have larger sample size, but the grads mixed cohort does have 21 respondents. And then for the coping self-efficacy scale, you can see here that the graduate student only cohort had slightly lower baseline scores. So you can see it's lower than both the mixed cohorts and undergraduates, which are very similar. And that pattern remains in the post program. So all 3 groups demonstrated learning. So you can see that they're increasing. The full scale here is 260. And so they're similarly arranged that the grad student only cohort has a lower baseline. It still has a lower median post program, but they all demonstrated similar levels of improvement. And so some of the results from the assessment that I put together, the Likert scales weren't super informative. So my assessment was sent to all cohorts. Running this spring, there were 3 cohorts, and there were 2 graduate students in the other 2 cohorts. So due to scheduling reasons or whatever, there were 2 graduate students that were in mixed cohorts this quarter. So I used them as comparison, but you can see that the 6 students in the all grad student cohorts, as well as the 2 graduate students in the mixed cohorts, all responded very much to both. I could relate to my peers, and I felt that they could relate to me. So not super informative there, but still good that we got a sense of how much they could relate to each other. The question I was really interested in was how, if at all, did the members of your cohort affect your experience? So they weren't prompted to talk about grad students or anything like that, but you can see some of the bolded phrases I have here did come up often. So students liked that they shared feelings about grad students and were dealing with the same issues in grad school. They had stories that they could relate to and felt understood, and clearly they just valued having a cohort with similar experiences. And I believe I forgot to mention it, but so I was the student facilitator for this cohort, and then the staff facilitator, who was an intern at the Women's Center, and HPA was a master's in social work student at the time. So it really was all grad students in the Zoom room. Another question I asked was how likely they were to recommend the program to a peer. So for the 6 students in my cohort, 4 said very likely and 2 said somewhat likely. Again, they had an opportunity to explain their response to that question. And you can see a lot of the same themes coming up. So similar experiences and challenges, to just mention having like a space to talk about grad school and the challenges that it presents. And this last person just talked about how it reminded them that they're not alone, and that other grad students are experiencing the same challenges. So based on this data, again, this is just some of it, and I haven't fully analyzed all of it, but the program appears to be equally effective for both graduate and undergraduate students. Graduate students do demonstrate similarly effective learning within a cohort of their peers, so it didn't do any harm, but wasn't any more efficacious based on the sample size we have. And based on the qualitative data, there is value in completing the program in a cohort of peers with similar lived experiences. However, there's also value to diversity and being among those with different lived experiences that came up in some of the other data that I haven't presented here. So with that, I would like to thank this program. I've learned a lot throughout it. Definitely thank Sam, who runs Resilient NU, and the whole student board. Thanks to everyone that helped me develop the survey and learn how to present and analyze this data, and also to my peers and the alums that have come back and given us advice and feedback throughout the 2 quarters.